Hello everyone, and welcome to another video. Today we are going to be talking about things such as the Salem witch trials, the Peacoat War, and a lot of how the New England colonists interacted with the Native Americans. So let's go ahead and get started with the Salem witch trials. In addition to punishing religious dissenters, the New England colonies prosecuted suspected witches. Whenever cattle and children, sickened and died, the New Englanders suspected evil magic. For the safety of the community, witches had to be identified, prosecuted, and neutralized. The supposed victims of magic blamed neighbors who seemed to bear them ill will. The most spectacular accusations occurred in and around Salem, Massachusetts in 1692. The authorities there tried, convicted, and executed 19 suspected witches. Now the picture I've included here, as you can see on the slide, is supposed to be a painting of one of these trials. Now, if you look closely, I know it might be hard to see, but in this picture we have what looks like some church officials and more educated individuals, acting as judge and lawyer and that sort of thing. And we have this woman here on trial. And if you look closely, she appears to be shooting lightning bolts out of her hands. There looks like to be some shackles or handcuffs here that have gone flying across the room. I'm going to go ahead out on a limb here and say that this picture is probably an exaggeration of what actually has happened. I do not think that this woman actually shot lightning bolts out of her hands like she's Electro from Spider-Man. But, if you or somebody else has this ability, I am very interested to see it. Yes, I would say that this picture is definitely an exaggeration of what has happened here. This man appears to have either she killed him with her lightning magic, or he has passed out from fright. So, but this was a portrayal of one of these witch trials. To continue on with the slide here, it says, but when the accusations reached members of prominent families, including the governor's wife, the judges dropped any further trials. Reassessed as a fiasco, the Salem mania ended the prosecution of witches in New England. So, it's funny how they had all these witch trials and they're hunting these witches and everything, but then whenever the governor's wife is accused, oh well, we gotta stop that now. Yeah, well, we know this isn't right. Yeah. But the sad truth here is that 19 suspected witches were executed in Salem alone, and the method of execution was to be lit on fire and burned to death. Okay, so the Salem witch trials, famously they're known more to be of women. We have a graphic here that gives us a breakdown of some of the numbers, accusations, and this is just in 1 year, 1692, broken down by month of when these women were, mostly women, we'll get to that in a moment, were accused. 39 in the month of May, 3 in June, 12 in July, 23 in August, 30 up to 33 in September. So now the accused, of who was accused, 78% of the accused were women. Now 22% of them were men, but most of the trials have been gained a lot of notoriety as being against women. Executions, here shows a graph that it's steadily increased until September. If we look over here at the accusations, it drops off very steeply there after September. And if we refer back to the last slide, I believe that's when the governor's wife was accused of being a witch. So, of the last trials in 1692, 49 charges were dismissed and 3 were found guilty of witchcraft. But even those 3 that were found guilty were pardoned of their crime, meaning that they were essentially forgiven. English relationships with American Indians. The Puritans saw American Indians as lazy savages who accepted life in the wild instead of laboring to conquer nature. The colonists remade the land to resemble England by clearing and fencing fields for cultivation in the English fashion. They built English-style homes, barns, mills, and churches. They introduced domesticated cattle, sheep, horses, and pigs. Colonists also killed wild animals that preyed on livestock. Now, this was a vast difference to the Native American way of life. In 1637, Puritans led an assault against the Pequot, destroying their villages. This woodcut shows Puritans and their Indian allies attacking a Pequot fort. The Pequot War. By the 1630s, the Puritans of New England were engaged in a brisk fur trade with the Pequots and several other American Indian nations. I'm going to admit to you guys, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but that's what we're going to call them, and if that is incorrect, I do apologize. However, it was an uneasy relationship. Rivalry over control of the trade, coupled with Indian opposition to English territorial expansion, led to the outbreak of the Pequot War. In 1636, Puritans accused the Pequots of murdering an English trader, but the Pequots denied the accusation. Allied with the Narragansett and Mohegan Indians, enemies of the Pequots, the Puritans attacked several Pequot villages. In turn, the Pequots raided a Puritan village. Outraged, the Puritans burned a Pequot village filled with mostly women and children and killed most of its 600 to 700 inhabitants. So this started as the death of one trader, and then it just kept escalating and escalating and escalating, which led to these brutal slaughters of entire villages, like it says there at the end, filled with mostly women and children, and killed most of the 600 to 700 inhabitants. The carnage was so complete that even the Puritans' American Indian allies were shocked by the manner of the Englishmen's fight, because it is too furious and slays too many men. In 1638, by the Treaty of Hartford, the victorious English, Narragansetts, and the Mohegans virtually eliminated the Pequot nation. The Pequots lost all their lands, and surviving Pequots went to live among other American Indian peoples. So this war was brutal. It was a massacre, and the Puritans and their allies completely wiped out this nation of American Indians. Attempts to convert the Indians. After the Pequot War, the Puritans worked to convert and transform the American Indians into versions of English Christians. They pressured the American Indians to move into special praying towns, where they would be closely supervised by missionaries. By 1674, Massachusetts had 14 praying towns with 1,600 American Indian inhabitants. After restricting the American Indians to a few special towns, the Puritans claimed most of their lands for colonial settlement. So, did they really care about converting them to Christianity, or were they just trying to get them out of their lands and into these towns that were set aside for them, where they would be supervised, and then the Puritans went out and claimed the American Indian lands for colonial settlement? So what does that sound like to you that we still have today? These special places that are set aside for the Native Americans. It's essentially reservations. Yeah, so they were set aside these where they would be closely supervised. Yeah, it was essentially a way to steal their land out from under them. Now, on this map, all of the towns that are in red are these praying towns. Essentially a place where they could put all these American Indians and kind of seal them away and have them supervised and in the name of converting them to Christianity, which we know what it really was, stealing their land. Life in a praying town. The missionaries forced the praying town American Indians to abandon their traditional ways and to don English clothing. The missionaries insisted upon the English division of gender roles. They urged the American Indian men to forsake hunting and fishing in favor of farming. The American Indian women were supposed to withdraw from the cornfields to tend to the home and to spin and weave cloth, just as English women did. However, only a minority agreed to enter the praying towns. As the colonists continued to expand their settlements at the Indians' expense, most American Indians despaired of keeping their lands without a war. So, they are trying to keep their lands, but the colonists keep expanding, and they want more and more and more. King Philip's War. In 1675, a massive Indian rebellion erupted. The colonists called it King Philip's War after a chief of the Wampanoag Indians named Metacom, who was known to the colonists as King Philip. After Philip, or Metacom, led attacks against towns in the Plymouth colony, the war spread as a loose confederation of American Indians raided English settlements. So, this Indian chief's name, chief of the Wampanoag Indians, he was named Metacom. Sounds like a business name if you were like running a business on the internet. Yeah, I run Metacom. That was his name, but the colonists referred to him as King Philip. With guns acquired from traders, the American Indians at first devastated the New England settlements, destroying 12 towns. But the tide of the war turned in 1676 when the rebels began to starve because their crops were destroyed by colonial counterattacks. The American Indians also ran out of ammunition after losing their access to colonial traders. In August, Metacom died in battle, shot down by a praying town American Indian who served with the colonists. The war killed at least 1,000 English colonists and about 3,000 American Indians. So, Metacom is going to die in battle here, and he is shot by an American Indian who had essentially been brainwashed by these praying towns. The defeated American Indians lost most of their remaining lands in southern New England. They survived only as a small minority on limited lands within a region dominated by the newcomers. In 1700, the 92,000 colonists outnumbered New England's 9,000 American Indians. So, by this time, the American Indians had been so war-ravaged that there was only 9,000 of them left, with 92,000 colonists. So they were vastly outnumbered in New England. Some of the defeated American Indians fled northward to the French colony of Canada, where they found refuge. Whenever the French waged war on the English, the refugee American Indians sought revenge by raiding the New England frontier. Those wars became frequent and bloody after 1689, as the English and the French escalated their struggle to dominate North America. So these Native Americans that get their villages wiped out and their families murdered and massacred, they're going to run and they're going to seek refuge with these other tribes and with the French up in what would become Canada. So, and whenever they run away, they're going to want revenge. They're going to want to get back at the English for what they did to their way of life. So, whenever the French are going to attack the English here in just a few short years, the American Indians are going to run to sign up with and side with the French to get revenge for what the English did to them. Okay, guys, that's it for this video. I hope everybody's having a great day, and I will see you again real soon.